All right, so welcome back. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to start connecting these view widgets to our code. So that's our goal in this exercise. So come back into your Xcode project here. Open back up the Assistant Editor. Preview is a very valuable tool. We're going to use it quite a bit in this class. But you could also switch to Automatic. Sorry, it's off the screen here. And then under Automatic, I selected ViewController.Swift. So now I've got these two things up, and now what I can start doing is I can drag references from my interface builder over into my code. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need a lot of references. So what I like to do is I like to just right-click drag, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an outlet to each of these sliders. So I'm just going to call it red slider, and then what the heck, I'm just going to make some space below here. After the red slider, I'm going to drag over and get the green slider. And I think you can see where I'm going with this. Go ahead and grab the other two. So I just paused and added them. I'm now adding my last one for my alpha slider. So I've got four outlets. You can see it says IBOutlet. That stands for Interface Builder Outlet, to my four sliders. Next thing I want to grab outlets to are my four labels. So I'm just going to call this red label. And then you can do the same thing for the other three. So I paused it, and here I'm adding my last one, my alpha label. You'll notice that my preferred naming convention is I like to say the name of the object type at the end. That's completely optional. Most people don't do that. I just kind of like to do it. So now I've got references to those 8 things, so we can modify them from code. So if we ever want to adjust them from code, now we can. We also need a reference to this view, because this view is going to actually show the color that we have with the sliders. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it color view. So that looks pretty good. Outlets are a way to just connect to the object itself. There's also a thing called actions. And so whenever like a button is pressed or something happens, the action gets fired. And we want to add an action for the sliders as well. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag over from the slider just like I did before. But then very importantly, I'm going to change this to say action. And then I'm just going to call this slider changed. Now, one thing you can do with actions that's kind of neat is if you want them to all just call the same function, that's very easy to do. And what you can do is you can just drag them over and just drop them onto that old function. And the nice thing is you don't have to specify whether it's an outlet or action, because it knows it's an action because it's the same as the one that's there. The hardest part is actually selecting these things. By the way, I did that from the graphical view there, but sometimes it's easier to just go ahead and see the outline here, and then what you can do is you can actually just drag from the outline on over, and sometimes it's easier to do from the outline instead of from the graphical display. So there I've added 9 outlets and 4 actions. Admittedly, all the actions went to the same place, and what I'm ready to do is I'm ready to start playing with code a little bit. One of the things that I like to do whenever I start a project is I like to just make sure that I'm actually like getting an action. And so what you can do is inside your slider changed, you can type print line, which is one way you can do logs with Swift. And then I'm just going to say in here, slider changed. And so now I can run it. And so now what it's going to do is whenever a slider changes, it's just going to print the message, slider changed. So you can see it prints it so many times it becomes hard to see. So let's do a little better than that. What I would really like to do is I would like to call a function to update the view. I could put it in here, but instead I'm just going to make a new function called update view. Update view doesn't exist yet, so it's yelling at me. And what I'm going to do, I actually don't need did receive memory warning, so I'm just going to blow that one away. I'm going to go ahead and type update view, and presuming that this is your first Swift code, it'll be new for you in making a function. So you say the word func, and then to be honest, the rest of the syntax looks pretty much like you would expect. What I'd like to do to start with is I'd like to just print line of something that's slightly more descriptive. So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to print out what the values are of the different sliders. So one way we can do that is by string interpolation. So many fun new words. So what we can do is we can say red slider dot value. And so the way string interpolation works here is, I'll just get it up a little higher on the screen, is you print out a string, but you actually say like the variables inside of the string by adding the slash and then 2 parentheses. It's very similar to like how %d worked or %at, but instead of saying like %at and then putting the variable name over there, it lets you just put it right inside the string, and it's a little easier to read, which is nice. So now, whenever any slider changes, it's going to tell us what the red value is. So I can see that as I move this red value, it goes over to 1. You'll notice my label doesn't magically change. We have to actually code that up. And if I move it over to the far right, I get a value of 0. It turns out that the min for a slider is 0, and then the max is 1. That worked out to be exactly what we wanted, but you actually can set those min and maxes. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more to our string here. So instead of just printing out red, let's go ahead and print out all of them. So see if you can figure out how to add the rest. So there I added the rest. It's too long for my screen here to make it all be on one line, but if you fit it all on one line, then that's great. And then as I move this thing around, it'll show me the value of red, and then it'll also show me the value for green and for alpha. If you want a little bit more space in this log, you can actually like turn things off down here in the same way that you can turn things on and off up there. And so as I move this guy around, you can see that it prints out these kind of crazy numbers. One thing you should also be aware of is you'll notice how many digits get printed by default here, and it's actually like 6. So that's something we'll have to fix later whenever we want to show only 2 decimal points in our values up here. All right, so that's it for this time. We've obviously got a connection made between our storyboard and our code. We'll come back next time and we'll write a little bit more code to make it work all the way through with what we want.